When Keanu Reeves returned to the Pacific Coast Stunt Academy in Los Angeles, he expected to find memories of his early days as a struggling actor. What he did not expect was to find Harold Thompson, the same stunt coach who had believed in him when every director in Hollywood called him talentless, still mopping the gym floors at 80 years old. Not as a coach, as a janitor. The discovery stunned the action legend. While most people would have offered a handshake, maybe an autograph, and moved on, Keanu's response would set in motion a chain of events that no one could have predicted. What began as a simple visit would transform not just Mr. Thompson's life, but an entire community of forgotten Hollywood heroes. Sometimes the people who change our lives the most are the ones the world never notices. The black pickup truck pulled into the parking lot of the Pacific Coast Stunt Academy. The afternoon sun bounced off the windows of the building where Keanu's action career had truly begun more than 35 years ago. He sat in the truck for a moment, hands still on the steering wheel, staring at the familiar facade. The building looked different now. Sleeker, more corporate. A massive banner hung across the entrance announcing the Academy's 50th anniversary celebration next month. But the bones of the place remained the same. The warehouse structure. The high ceilings designed to accommodate wire work and aerial stunts. The parking lot where he had once slept in his car between training sessions because he could not afford rent. Keanu remembered those nights vividly. The way the streetlights cast strange shadows through his windshield. The hunger that gnawed at his stomach because he had spent his last $20 on training fees instead of food. The doubt that crept in at 3 in the morning, whispering that he was wasting his life, chasing an impossible dream. He stepped out of the truck. At 60 years old, he was not the young actor who had walked through these doors decades ago, with nothing but desperate hope and a willingness to get hit. His knees creaked a little now. His back complained after long action sequences. The surgeries had accumulated over the years. 3 on his left knee, 2 on his right shoulder. Countless stitches and broken bones that had healed, but never quite forgotten their injuries. But he still moved with the fluid economy of motion that Mr. Thompson had drilled into him all those years ago. Economy of movement, the old coach used to say. Every motion should have purpose. Waste nothing. That was the difference between a stunt performer who lasted and one who burned out in 5 years. Keanu straightened his faded black hoodie, the one with the small hole near the left elbow that he refused to throw away. His stylist hated it. His publicist had offered to buy him 100 replacements. But this hoodie had been with him through 3 Matrix films, 4 John Wick installments, and countless moments when he needed to feel invisible. It was his armor against the world. He adjusted his baseball cap lower over his eyes. Maybe he would not be recognized right away. Maybe he could just soak in the memories first. The main entrance had been completely renovated since his days here. Glass and steel had replaced the old industrial doors. A reception desk sat where there had once been a simple sign in sheet tacked to the wall. The walls were covered with motivational posters featuring action stars in mid-flight. Some of them he recognized. Some of them he had worked with. One of them was him. 2 young men walked past, deep in conversation about a wire rig malfunction on some streaming series. They wore the Academy's training gear, their bodies lean and eager. Their eyes carrying that hungry look that Keanu remembered from his own youth. They did not even glance at the tall man in the worn hoodie and scuffed boots. Keanu smiled to himself. Back in his day, he had not been Keanu Reeves yet either. Just another hungry kid from Canada who had been told repeatedly that he would never make it. Too wooden, too quiet, too ethnic looking for leading roles, but not ethnic enough for character parts. Hollywood had 1,000 ways to tell you that you did not belong. He followed the familiar path toward the main training gym, passing trophy cases and photographs that now lined the hallways. There was an entire section dedicated to the Academy's most successful graduates. His own face stared back at him from multiple frames. John Wick, Neo from The Matrix, Jack Traven from Speed, Johnny Utah from Point Break, newspaper clippings, magazine covers, behind-the-scenes photos from action sequences that had defined modern cinema. He stopped in front of one photograph he had never seen before. It showed a much younger version of himself, barely 22, standing in the middle of this very gym with sweat pouring down his face. His hands were wrapped in training tape, his body covered in bruises, and his eyes burned with a desperation that made his current self flinch. He remembered that day. He had been practicing the same fall for 6 hours straight, trying to perfect a technique that the coordinator said was impossible for someone with his limited experience. His body had screamed for him to stop. His mind had whispered that he should give up. But something in him had refused to quit. That something had a name, Harold Thompson. He had not been back in almost a decade. Life had gotten busy. Films to shoot, charities to support, a motorcycle collection that needed attention, 1,000 excuses that seemed reasonable at the time but now felt hollow. The smell hit him as soon as he pushed open the gym doors. That mix of sweat, rubber mats, and the faint metallic tang of safety cables. The same in every stunt gym in America. Some things never changed. The smell transported him instantly back to 1989, when he had walked through these same doors as a nobody with nothing to lose. But the gym itself had transformed beyond recognition. New crash pads in vibrant colors, state-of-the-art wire rigs hanging from the ceiling like mechanical spiders, digital monitoring systems tracking every movement with precision that would have seemed like science fiction in his day. Cameras everywhere, recording everything for analysis. And on one wall, a massive mural of Keanu himself in his John Wick suit mid-combat, firing 2 pistols with balletic precision. The words, dedication, precision, excellence, painted in bold letters beneath it. Well, that is new, he muttered to himself. The gym was not empty. At the far end, a group of young stunt performers were practicing fight choreography under the watchful eye of a coordinator Keanu did not recognize. The sounds of impact pads and grunted exertions filled the cavernous space. None of them noticed the legend standing in the doorway. Keanu walked along the edge of the training mats, memories flooding back with each step. This corner was where he had learned to take his first proper fall. That section of wall was where he had practiced punches until his knuckles bled through the tape. The ceiling above was where he had hung suspended for hours, learning to trust the wires that would later make him fly as Neo. This was where he had practiced the same kick 700 times until his legs gave out. This was where he had been told he would never be more than a background player. This was where he had promised himself that no director would ever doubt his commitment again. He was so lost in thought that he almost did not notice the old man slowly pushing a mop near the equipment storage area. There was something about the way the man moved. Careful, deliberate, taking pride in his work despite its humble nature. The mop moved in precise arcs, covering every inch of floor with methodical attention. No wasted motion. Economy of movement, something that seemed impossibly familiar. Keanu watched him for a long moment. The old man wore blue work pants and a gray shirt with the Academy's logo stitched above the pocket. His back was slightly bent, curved by decades of physical labor. His hair was white as fresh snow, thin and wispy. His movements were slow but steady, carrying the rhythm of someone who had performed this task thousands of times. He made sure no spot was missed, no corner neglected. Even in this menial work, there was a professionalism that spoke of deeper pride, a commitment to excellence that transcended the nature of the task. "Excuse me," Keanu said as he approached. The old man looked up, squinting a little against the gym lights. His eyes were rheumy with age but still sharp. "Gym is in use for scheduled training, sir. Unless you have a session booked with one of our instructors." "No, I am just visiting. I used to train here a long time ago. The janitor nodded slowly. Lot of folks come back to visit. This place has that effect on people. Must have been some time ago, judging by the look in your eyes. 1989, Keanu said. 35 years. 89. The old man whistled softly, a sound that crackled with age. That is going back some years. Before the new owners. Before all these fancy computers and cameras. I was already working here then. Different times. Harder times in some ways. Better times in others. Keanu stared at him, suddenly seeing past the wrinkles and white hair. The way he held himself, even with his bent back. The slight tilt of his head when listening, as if cataloging every word for later analysis. The hands that had once demonstrated the perfect way to throw a screen punch without making contact. The voice that had guided him through his darkest moments. Mr. Thompson, is that you? The janitor tilted his head, studying Keanu's face with those sharp old eyes. Do I know you, son? It is Keanu. Keanu Reeves. Mr. Thompson's eyes widened. His weathered face transformed with recognition and disbelief. He leaned his mop against the wall with the careful precision of someone who never left tools unsecured. He took a step closer, then another, his movements uncertain for the first time. Little Keanu Reeves. Is that really you? Keanu grinned, his brown eyes warm with emotion. Not so little anymore, Mr. Thompson. Well, I will be. The old man shook his head in wonder, his white hair catching the overhead lights. Keanu Reeves. Right here in person. Standing in my gym. After all these years. He hesitated, then held out his weathered hand. The fingers were gnarled with arthritis, the knuckles swollen, but the grip was still firm. Pardon me for not recognizing you right away. Eyes are not what they used to be. Got cataracts coming in, and the insurance does not cover the good surgery. Instead of shaking his hand, Keanu pulled the old man into a gentle hug. Mr. Thompson felt fragile in his arms, like a bird, like something precious that might break if held too tightly. When they separated, Keanu noticed the janitor's eyes were watery, tears threatening to spill down his weathered cheeks. I cannot believe you are still working here, Mr. Thompson. It has been what, over 40 years? Mr. Thompson nodded slowly, his hand trembling slightly as he steadied himself against a nearby equipment rack. 45 years next month. Started in '79 when this place was just a warehouse with some mats on the floor. Been here through 4 owners, 3 renovations, and more students than I can count. 45 years. Keanu could not hide his shock. And you are still working full-time. At your age. Got nowhere else to be, son. And the academy still needs cleaning. Someone has to make sure these young folks have a safe place to train. Keanu looked at this man who had been quietly working in the background all these years. Something was wrong. Very wrong. Harold Thompson had been the most respected stunt coordinator on the West Coast. He had trained 3 generations of Hollywood's greatest action performers. He had designed fight sequences that were still studied in film schools around the world. He should have retired with honors decades ago. He should be consulting on major films, living comfortably on his pension, not pushing a mop at 80 years old. You remember how you used to stay late to work with me? Keanu asked. After everyone else went home. Mr. Thompson's weathered face lit up with the memory, years seeming to fall away as he smiled. Sure do. You were always the last one in the gym. 5 in the morning until midnight sometimes. Never seen nobody work so hard in all my years. He chuckled, a sound that crackled with age but still carried warmth. Used to have to practically drag you out so I could lock up and go home to Dorothy. She would call the gym phone asking where I was, and I would tell her some crazy Canadian kid was still practicing falls like his life depended on it. How is Mrs. Thompson? Keanu asked. The light in Mr. Thompson's eyes flickered and dimmed. His smile faltered for just a moment before he recovered. Still fighting. Had a stroke 3 years back. Bad one. Lost the use of her legs. Doctors said she was lucky to survive at all. But she is still the most beautiful woman I have ever known. Still the love of my life after 58 years. I am so sorry to hear that, Keanu said, his heart acting. We manage. Mr. Thompson's voice carried the same quiet dignity it always had. She is stronger than me, truth be told. Always has been. Even now, in that wheelchair, she makes me laugh every single day. Makes me grateful for every moment we have together. From across the gym, the stunt coordinator blew a whistle. The training session was ending. Young performers gathered their gear and water bottles, chatting excitedly about their progress. I should finish up here, Mr. Thompson said, reaching for his mop with arthritic fingers. Got the locker rooms to do before I clock out. Then the hallways. The work never really ends. What time do you finish? Keanu asked. About 6, usually. Sometimes later depending on who makes a mess. The young ones these days, they do not always clean up after themselves like we did in the old days. Could we catch up when you are done? Maybe grab some dinner. I would love to hear about everything that has happened since I left. Mr. Thompson looked surprised by the invitation. His eyes widened, and for a moment he seemed almost confused. You want to have dinner with me? Do not you have important people to see? Movie stars and producers and such. People who matter in this town. Keanu put his hand on the old man's shoulder, feeling the bones beneath the thin fabric of his work shirt. Mr. Thompson, right now you are the most important person I want to see. The only person I want to see. The janitor's eyes crinkled with his smile, tears finally spilling down his weathered cheeks. Well, in that case, I accept. But nothing fancy. These old bones do not fit so well in fancy chairs anymore, and I do not have clothes for anywhere with tablecloths. I know just the place, Keanu said. I will meet you at the side entrance at 6. As Keanu walked back through the halls of the academy, his mind was racing. Mr. Thompson had always seemed old in his younger eyes, but now the man was 80 and still pushing a mop around these floors. Not coaching, not consulting. Not honored for his decades of service. Cleaning. Something about that did not sit right. Not at all. By the time he reached his truck, Keanu had made a decision. He did not know exactly what he was going to do yet, but he knew one thing for certain. Mr. Thompson's life was about to change. Keanu waited by the side entrance at exactly 6 o'clock. He had spent the last hour making some calls, canceling a meeting with his production company about the next John Wick installment, rescheduling a script reading for a passion project he had been developing for 3 years, postponing a charity event where he was supposed to make an appearance. Some things were more important than business. The academy had emptied out for the evening. Only a few cars remained in the parking lot, their shadows stretching long in the fading sunlight. Keanu leaned against the wall, checking his watch, watching the minutes tick by. At 6:15, the side door opened and Mr. Thompson shuffled out. He had changed from his work uniform into a clean button-up shirt that had been pressed with care, despite its frayed collar. His khaki pants hung a little loose on his thin frame, held up by a belt that had been cinched to its tightest notch. His shoes were polished but worn thin at the soles. Sorry to keep you waiting, Mr. Thompson said, slightly out of breath. The new coordinator wanted to chat about the anniversary event. Asked if I had any old photographs they could use for the display. Took me a while to remember where I had put them. No problem at all, Keanu replied. My truck is over there. Mr. Thompson's eyes widened at the sight of the rusted Ford pickup. That is yours. I figured you would be driving something fancier. A Ferrari or one of those fancy electric cars all the movie stars have these days. Keanu shrugged, opening the passenger door for the old man. It gets me where I need to go. Besides, I never saw the point of driving something that would make people stare. As they drove through Los Angeles, the city transformed around them. The modern glass towers of the business district gave way to older neighborhoods, then to the sprawling suburbs that seemed to stretch forever. Mr. Thompson pointed out changes with the sharp eye of someone who had watched this city evolve for half a century. That used to be an orange grove when I first came to California, he said, pointing to a massive shopping complex. And over there, that was the first apartment Dorothy and I rented when we got married. $12 a month. Can you imagine? Where did you two meet? Dance studio in Pasadena. Mr. Thompson's eyes grew soft with the memory. 1966. She was teaching ballroom. I was taking lessons because I thought it might help with my stunt work. Coordination and all that. Took one look at her and forgot every step I had ever learned. Love at first sight. More like love at first fall. I tripped over my own feet trying to impress her and knocked over a whole rack of chairs. She laughed so hard she had to sit down. I knew right then I was going to marry her. Took me 6 months to convince her, but I knew. They drove in comfortable silence for a while, the city lights beginning to flicker on as dusk settled over Los Angeles. I was thinking we could eat at Musso and Frank, Keanu said. Is it still around? Mr. Thompson's face lit up with genuine delight. Sure is. Been there since 1919. Outlasted everything else in this town. You remember that place? Best steaks in Hollywood, Keanu said with a smile. You took me there after my first real stunt. The one where I almost broke my neck doing that high fall wrong. Mr. Thompson laughed, the sound mixing with a wheeze. Almost gave me a heart attack that day. You came off that wire at the wrong angle, and I thought for sure we were going to the hospital. But you tucked and rolled just like I taught you. Landed hard, but you got up. You always got up. Because you taught me that getting up was the whole point. Musso and Frank Grill looked exactly as Keanu remembered. Dark wood paneling that had absorbed a century of Hollywood stories. Red leather booths worn smooth by generations of dreamers and stars. Photos of Hollywood legends on every wall, some smiling, some serious, all of them gone now, but immortalized in black and white. The place had served everyone from Charlie Chaplin to Marilyn Monroe, from Humphrey Bogart to Leonardo DiCaprio. It smelled of history and prime beef, and the kind of old-fashioned cocktails that had fallen out of fashion and come back around again. A middle-aged waiter in a red jacket approached their table with practiced grace. What can I get you gentlemen this evening? He stopped mid-sentence, his professional composure cracking as he stared at Keanu. Recognition dawned in his eyes like sunrise. Oh my goodness. Are you? Keanu nodded politely, keeping his voice low. Yes. Could we get 2 menus, please? And maybe a quieter table in the back, if one is available. The waiter hurried away, whispering to his colleagues. Soon everyone in the restaurant was sneaking glances at their table, phones appearing as if by magic. Sorry about that, Keanu said to Mr. Thompson. Happens everywhere I go these days. I should have warned you. Mr. Thompson chuckled, clearly amused rather than bothered. Must be strange being recognized everywhere you go, like being a zoo animal. You get used to it, Keanu replied. Learn to tune it out. The real challenge is remembering that the person taking your picture is a human being too. Someone with their own dreams and struggles. I try to be kind, even when I want to be left alone. But enough about me. I want to hear about you, Mr. Thompson. All these years at the academy, that is dedication beyond anything I have ever seen. The old man shrugged, his bony shoulders rising and falling beneath his worn shirt. It is just a job, son. Someone has got to keep the place clean. Make sure the equipment is safe. Look out for the young ones who are too proud to admit when they are struggling. But why are you still working at 80? Most people retire long before that. Enjoy their golden years. Travel. Spend time with family. Mr. Thompson's smile faded slightly, wrinkles deepening around his eyes. Well, retirement is for folks who can afford it, I suppose. Before Keanu could ask more questions, the waiter returned with their menus and a napkin for Keanu to sign. After ordering their food, steaks and mashed potatoes and those legendary dinner rolls, Keanu steered the conversation back to where it needed to go. Tell me about your family, Mr. Thompson. Tell me everything. The old man's eyes brightened despite their wariness. A light flickered in them that had not been there before. Got my wife Dorothy. We will be married 58 years next month. She was a dancer on Broadway before we met. The Rockets, if you can believe it. Most graceful woman you ever saw. Even now, in that chair, she moves like music. He paused to take a sip of water, his hand trembling slightly. 2 kids, Michael and Patricia, both living back east now. Michael is an accountant in Boston. Patricia teaches elementary school in Philadelphia. 3 grandchildren I have not seen in 2 years because plane tickets cost more than I make in a month. That is wonderful that you have family, Keanu said carefully. And Dorothy, how is she managing since the stroke? We get by. The light in Mr. Thompson's eyes dimmed again. Had to convert our dining room into a bedroom because she cannot manage the stairs anymore. The bathroom is too small for her wheelchair. She cannot reach the kitchen cabinets or use the stove safely. But she never complains. Not once in 3 years. Just smiles and makes the best of what we have. Is there help available? Government programs or something? Mr. Thompson's jaw tightened. We do not take handouts. Never have. Never will. My father taught me that a man provides for his family with his own 2 hands. I have been working since I was 14 years old, and I will keep working until the day I die. Keanu recognized the pride in the old man's voice. It was the same pride that had kept him working all these years instead of asking for help. The same pride that made him polish gym floors like he was polishing championship trophies. The pride of a generation that believed in earning everything and accepting nothing. Their food arrived, the steaks perfectly cooked, the mashed potatoes creamy and rich. As they ate, Keanu asked more questions. He learned that Mr. Thompson had started working at the academy in 1979, first as a stunt performer doing small gags in television shows, then as a coordinator designing action sequences, then as head instructor training the next generation. He had been at the top of his profession for over 2 decades. He had trained hundreds of performers over the decades, taught them how to fall without breaking, how to fight without hurting, how to make the impossible look effortless, how to trust their bodies and their partners, how to walk away from a bad stunt setup, even when the director was screaming about the budget. Never thought I would end up mopping floors, Mr. Thompson admitted quietly, pushing a piece of steak around his plate. But life has a way of humbling you when you least expect it. What happened? Keanu asked gently. You were the best coach in the business. Everyone knew it. Everyone respected it. Mr. Thompson was silent for a long moment. His fork stopped moving. His eyes grew distant. New management came in about 8 years ago, he finally said. Bought the academy when it was struggling financially. Young man named Richard Blake. Had a lot of money. Had a lot of ideas. Had a lot of anger, too, though I did not understand why at first. Richard Blake. The name stirred something in Keanu's memory. He had heard it somewhere before. At an industry event. In a trade magazine. Somewhere. What kind of ideas? Younger instructors. Flashier techniques. More focus on spectacle than safety. Social media presence. Brand partnerships. Everything had to look good on camera, even if it was not safe in practice. Mr. Thompson stared at his plate, unable to meet Keanu's eyes. He did not think I fit the new image. Said I was too old-fashioned. Said my methods were outdated. Said the industry had moved on and I was stuck in the past. He paused, his voice growing thick. Gave me a choice. Retire with nothing. No pension. No severance. No acknowledgement of 23 years as head instructor. Or stay on in a different capacity. As a janitor. Mr. Thompson nodded slowly, a tear escaping down his weathered cheek. Said it was the best he could offer given budget constraints. Said I should be grateful to have any job at all at my age. The memory came flooding back to Keanu. The day he had almost quit everything. You know what you said to me that day? The day I got rejected from that Vincent Masters film. Mr. Thompson thought for a moment, wiping his eyes with his napkin. Cannot say I recall exactly. That was a long time ago. You found me in the gym at midnight. punching the heavy bag until my hands bled through the tape. I had just been told by the most powerful director in Hollywood that I had no talent, that I was wasting everyone's time, that my face was too flat and my voice was too quiet, and I should go back to Canada where I belonged. I remember that night, Mr. Thompson said softly. You looked like you wanted to die. Never seen so much pain in a young man's eyes. I did want to die, Keanu admitted. I was ready to quit, pack up my stuff and disappear. Go back to Toronto and admit to everyone who had believed in me that they had been wrong. I had nothing, no money, no prospects, no one who believed in me. What did I say? Keanu met the old man's eyes across the table. You said, talent can be taught, but a warrior's heart, you either have it or you do not. And kid, you have got it. Mr. Thompson's eyes crinkled with his tired smile. Then you handed me the keys to the gym and said I could train as long as I wanted, as long as I locked up when I was done. You said, the only person who can decide you are finished is you. Everyone else is just noise. Mr. Thompson nodded slowly. Well, look at that. Gave advice to one of the biggest movie stars in the world. Guess these old words were worth something after all. That advice saved my life, Keanu said seriously. You trusted me with those keys, made me feel like I was worth something even after everyone else said I was worthless. You saw something in me that I could not see in myself. You were always worth something, son, Mr. Thompson replied. That is true for every kid who walks through those doors, famous or not, talented or not. Every single one of them has a warrior's heart. They just need someone to help them find it. They finished their meal sharing more memories. Mr. Thompson told stories about other performers he had helped over the years. The troubled kid from the streets of Compton who became a respected stunt coordinator on the biggest franchises in Hollywood. The young woman who had been told she was too small for action work, but went on to double for every major actress in the industry. The performer who nearly died in a stunt gone wrong, and how Mr. Thompson had stayed by his hospital bed for 3 weeks, teaching him physical therapy exercises so he could walk again. When the check came, Keanu insisted on paying despite Mr. Thompson's protests. Let me drive you home, he said as they left the restaurant. Several people had approached for autographs and photos, but Keanu had politely explained he was catching up with an old friend and asked for privacy. Mr. Thompson gave directions to a neighborhood on the outskirts of the city. As they drove, the houses grew smaller and more worn down. Manicured lawns gave way to patchy grass. New cars gave way to rusted sedans. The American dream fading street by street. Finally, they pulled up to a modest, single-story home with peeling paint and a small front porch. The roof sagged visibly in the middle. The gutters hung at odd angles. The walkway was cracked and uneven, with weeds pushing through the concrete. A makeshift wooden ramp had been hastily built over the front steps, already showing signs of rot and structural weakness. It looked like one good rain would collapse it entirely. That is our place, Mr. Thompson said quietly. Not much to look at, but it is home. Dorothy and I raised our kids here, celebrated every birthday, every holiday, every milestone in that living room. It is not fancy, but it is ours. Keanu noticed everything. The sagging roof that probably leaked when it rained. The cracked windows held together with tape. The railing that looked like it might give way if leaned on too hard. The overgrown yard that had once been tended with care. Would you like to come in? Mr. Thompson asked. Dorothy would love to see you. She still talks about the time you brought her flowers after your first movie premiere. I would be honored, Keanu replied, his heart heavy with what he was seeing. As they walked to the door, Mr. Thompson moved slowly, gripping the wobbly railing for support. Each step seemed to cost him effort. Each breath came a little harder than the last. Keanu fought the urge to help him, sensing the man's pride would not accept it. Dorothy, Mr. Thompson called as they entered. You will never guess who I brought home for a visit. The inside of the house was even more heartbreaking than the outside. The furniture was old but meticulously clean, every surface dusted despite the difficulty Dorothy must have reaching them from her wheelchair. Family photos covered every wall, chronicling decades of love and life. The narrow hallway was barely wide enough for a person to walk through, let alone a wheelchair. The kitchen doorway had scrape marks at wheelchair height, where Dorothy had tried to navigate spaces that were never designed for her current needs. From somewhere deeper in the house came the sound of wheels rolling across worn hardwood. A moment later, an elderly woman in a wheelchair appeared. Her silver hair was neatly styled, not a strand out of place. Her blouse was pressed and clean. Despite her frail appearance and the chair that confined her, her eyes were bright and alert and full of life. "Harold Thompson, what are you up to now?" she started to say in a voice that still carried traces of her Broadway training. Then she gasped when she saw Keanu standing in her living room. "Oh, my stars! Is that who I think it is?" "Yes, dear," Mr. Thompson said proudly. "Keanu Reeves himself came to visit the academy today and remembered your old husband." Dorothy Thompson's hand fluttered to her heart, her eyes filling with tears. Keanu Reeves. In our living room. After all these years. I never thought I would see the day. Keanu bent down to embrace her gently, careful of her fragile frame. "It is wonderful to see you, Mrs. Thompson. Your husband was very important to me when I was just starting out. I would not be standing here without him. I would not be anything without him." As he straightened up, Keanu looked around the small living room, cataloging every detail while trying not to be obvious about it. The thermostat set high to save on air conditioning, even though the evening was warm. The television that looked at least 20 years old, its screen flickering occasionally. The medical equipment stacked in corners and along walls. The hospital bed visible through a doorway that had once led to a dining room. And there, on a side table covered with a lace doily, was a scrapbook with a familiar leather cover. "Is that what I think it is?" Keanu pointed to the book. Mr. Thompson picked it up, looking slightly embarrassed. His weathered hands trembled as he held it. "Just some newspaper clippings I saved over the years. About you and some other kids from the academy who did well. Nothing special." He opened the scrapbook with the care of someone handling sacred texts. Inside were carefully preserved articles about Keanu's career, from his early stunts in B-movies that no one remembered, from the Point Break premiere that changed everything, from the Matrix phenomenon that redefined action cinema, from the John Wick franchise that proved he still had what it took at 60 years old. Every major milestone documented with care. Every clipping cut with precision and mounted with archival tape. Decades of success tracked by someone who had never stopped believing. Keanu swallowed hard, unable to speak. All these years, Mr. Thompson had been tracking his success, taking pride in it, as if Keanu were his own son. And here the man was, at 80, still mopping floors, living in a house that was falling apart around him, with a wife in a wheelchair who could not use her own bathroom, sleeping on a mattress on the floor because their old bed was too high for Dorothy to use safely. In that moment, standing in the humble living room of the man who had quietly helped shape his future, Keanu made a decision, one even more determined than the choice to stay in acting all those years ago. "Would you like some coffee, Mr. Reeves?" Dorothy asked, already wheeling herself toward the kitchen with practiced difficulty, bumping against door frames and furniture as she navigated the two small spaces. "Please call me Keanu, and coffee would be wonderful." He settled onto the worn sofa, feeling the broken spring beneath the cushion, as Mr. Thompson eased himself into his recliner with a small grunt of pain. "These old joints are not what they used to be. Every morning takes longer to get moving than the last." Keanu looked around the room, cataloging every detail while trying not to be obvious about it. The crack running across the ceiling that suggested water damage. The uneven floors that must make Dorothy's wheelchair difficult to navigate. The narrow doorways she could barely fit through. the medical equipment stacked in corners, the pill bottles lined up on the kitchen counter visible through the doorway, the grab bars that had been installed in the hallway but were already coming loose from the wall. Dorothy returned with a tray of mismatched coffee cups, the steam rising in the lamplight. Keanu accepted the steaming mug with genuine gratitude. "I apologize for the cups," she said. "They are nothing fancy. We used to have a matching set, but they broke over the years and we never replaced them. These are perfect, Mrs. Thompson." Coffee is coffee. The company is what matters. She smiled, the same grace visible in her movements that must have made her a stunning dancer decades ago. Even confined to a wheelchair, even struggling with spaces too small for her needs, she moved like music. "So I am guessing you are wondering why Harold is still working at his age," she said directly, her eyes sharp despite her years. Keanu nodded. "I was surprised to see him still at it. We do not have much choice," she said simply. "The academy pension was taken away when the new owners came in, said the previous arrangement was not legally binding, and with my medical bills after the stroke." She gestured to her wheelchair, to the hospital equipment visible through the doorway, to the pill bottles on the counter. "Dorothy," Mr. Thompson said softly, his voice carrying a warning. He should know, Harold. Dorothy's eyes were fierce despite her fragile frame. "This man flew back here after all these years. Came to see you. Sat through dinner listening to your old stories. The least we can do is be honest with him about what happened." "Tell me," Keanu said gently. "Please. I want to understand." Dorothy looked at her husband, then back at Keanu, her jaw set with determination. Harold was the head instructor at that academy for 23 years. Trained more successful stunt performers than anyone in the business. Won awards, earned respect, built that place into what it is today. She paused, her voice growing bitter. Then Richard Blake bought the place. Richard Blake. That name again. Blake was a student of Harold's, Dorothy continued. Back in the 80s. Came in as a young man with big dreams of being an action star. Had money from his family. Had ambition. But he did not have the natural talent for stunt work. His body just was not built for it. He kept getting hurt doing basic moves. "I tried to help him," Mr. Thompson said quietly. "Worked with him extra hours. Gave him every technique I knew. But some things cannot be taught. Some bodies just are not meant for certain kinds of work." "So, what happened?" Keanu asked. "Harold saw something else in him," Dorothy said. "Told him he had a mind for business. An eye for what audiences wanted. Encouraged him to pursue that instead of breaking his body trying to be something he was not." "I thought I was helping him," Mr. Thompson said, his voice heavy with regret. "Thought I was steering him toward his true calling. Thought I was being kind." "And you were right," Dorothy said firmly. "Richard became very successful. Made millions in real estate development. Built an empire. But he never forgot what Harold told him. That he did not have talent for stunts." Dorothy nodded, her silver hair catching the lamplight. "It ate at him for 30 years. Festered inside him like a wound that would not heal. When the academy was struggling financially after the 2008 crash, Richard saw his chance. He bought it for a fraction of its value. Swooped in like a vulture." She leaned forward in her wheelchair, her eyes blazing. "And his first act as owner was to demote Harold from head instructor to janitor. Called him into his office on his very first day and told him, 'You said I did not have talent. Now I own this place, and you clean the floors for me.'" Keanu felt a cold anger rising in his chest. "He did this on purpose, as revenge for advice you gave him decades ago. He called it a business decision," Mr. Thompson said. "Said the academy needed to modernize. Said my methods were outdated. Said I was too old to understand what young performers needed. But that is not what I meant," he added, his voice breaking with emotion. "I was trying to help him find his path. I believed in him. I just knew stunts were not it. I saw his real gifts. I was trying to honor those gifts. We know, dear." Dorothy reached across and took her husband's hand in hers. "What? Know the truth?" Keanu sat in silence, processing what he had just learned. The man who had saved his career, who had believed in him when no one else did, had spent the last 8 years being humiliated by someone he had tried to help, forced to clean toilets and mop floors in the very gym where he had once been king. "Why did you stay?" Keanu finally asked. "Why not quit? Why not find work somewhere else?" Mr. Thompson looked at his wife with eyes full of love and sorrow. Dorothy needed surgery after her stroke. Emergency surgery that cost more than our savings. Then physical therapy. Then equipment. Then medications that insurance would not cover. The bills kept coming, and our money kept going. He squeezed Dorothy's hand. I needed the paycheck, even if it was janitor's wages. Even if it meant seeing Richard's smug face every day. Even if it meant being invisible in the place I built. And I kept hoping, he added softly. Hoping what? That Richard would remember who I really was. That he would see past his anger. That he would realize I was never his enemy. Mr. Thompson's voice cracked. I wrote him a letter once. Tried to explain what I had really meant all those years ago. Poured my heart into that letter. He never responded. Dorothy's eyes glistened with tears. My husband has too much grace for his own good. He still believes the best in people, even when they do not deserve it. Keanu looked at these two remarkable people. 58 years of marriage, decades of service, a lifetime of helping others, and this was how they were being repaid. Humiliation, poverty, suffering. Something was going to change. He just needed to figure out how. The next morning, Keanu made a decision. He called Chad Stahelski first. Chad had been one of Mr. Thompson's students in the 90s, had gone on to become one of the most successful stunt coordinators and directors in Hollywood. He was the man who had created John Wick, who had revolutionized action cinema, who had helped Keanu reinvent his career. Chad, I need your help with something important. Name it, Chad replied without hesitation. Over the next 2 hours, Keanu explained everything. Mr. Thompson's situation, Richard Blake's revenge, the Thompsons' crumbling house and mounting medical bills. By the time he finished, Chad was already booking a flight. I will be there tomorrow morning, Chad said. Harold Thompson is the reason I have a career. The reason any of us have careers. We owe him everything. Keanu's next call was to Lawrence Fishburne, then Carrie, Ann Moss, then a dozen other actors and stunt performers who had trained under Mr. Thompson over the decades. Every single one of them agreed to help without a moment's hesitation. Then Keanu called his business manager. I need you to start a foundation, he said. Focus on supporting retired stunt performers and behind-the-scenes workers in the film industry, people who gave everything to this business and got forgotten. That will take months to set up properly, his manager replied. Then work fast. Finally, Keanu called a contractor he trusted, a man who had built sets for some of the biggest films in Hollywood and knew how to work miracles under impossible deadlines. I need you to renovate a house, Keanu said. Complete renovation, wheelchair accessible throughout, and I need it done in 10 days. 10 days? That is impossible. Nothing is impossible. I have seen you build entire worlds in less time. There was a pause on the line. Send me the address. I will have a team there by morning. At 2 o'clock the next afternoon, Keanu pulled into the Academy parking lot. He was not alone. Chad Stahelski sat in the passenger seat, his jaw set with determination. Lawrence Fishburne and Carrie, Ann Moss followed in a second vehicle. You sure about this? Chad asked, confronting Blake directly. Not confronting. Keanu's eyes were steady, just having a conversation, giving him a chance to do the right thing before we do it for him. They entered the academy together. The receptionist nearly dropped her phone when she recognized them. 4 of the most famous faces in action cinema, walking through her lobby like they owned the place. We are here to see Richard Blake, Keanu said calmly. Tell him Keanu Reeves wants to discuss a donation to the anniversary celebration. Within minutes, they were being escorted to the executive offices on the top floor. The hallway was lined with photos of successful graduates, including several of Keanu himself in various action poses. Richard Blake's office was impressive. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Los Angeles skyline. Expensive furniture that probably cost more than the Thompsons' entire house. Awards and accolades covering every wall. A monument to success built on the suffering of others. The man himself stood as they entered. He was in his mid-50s, trim and polished in a tailored suit that cost more than most people made in a month. His smile was wide but did not reach his eyes. The smile of a man who had learned to perform confidence without actually feeling it. Mr. Reeves. What an honor. And Mr. Stahelski, Mr. Fishburne, Ms. Moss. I had no idea the Academy had such distinguished visitors today. To what do I owe this pleasure? Richard. Keanu did not extend his hand. We need to talk about Harold Thompson. The smile flickered almost imperceptibly. The janitor. What about him? Keanu studied the man's face, looking for any trace of the young student Mr. Thompson had tried to help all those years ago, looking for any sign of the scared kid who had just wanted to belong. You know what about him? You know. Exactly. What about him? I am afraid I do not understand what you are implying. Keanu took a step closer, his voice calm but carrying an edge of steel. You demoted one of the most respected stunt coordinators in Hollywood history to janitorial work. You stripped him of his pension. You humiliated him every single day for 8 years, and you did it deliberately, as revenge for something he said to you 30 years ago. Richard's expression hardened, the mask slipping slightly. I run a business, Mr. Reeves. Personnel decisions are made based on what is best for the Academy. Personal feelings have nothing to do with it. Lawrence stepped forward, his deep voice filling the room. We all trained under Harold Thompson. Every successful stunt performer of our generation owes him something. What you did was not a business decision. It was cruelty dressed up in corporate language. He is 80 years old, Carrie, Anne added, her eyes blazing. His wife had a stroke 3 years ago. They cannot afford proper medical care because you cut his salary to minimum wage. They cannot afford to fix their house. He sleeps on a mattress on the floor so she can use the hospital bed. Richard's jaw tightened. His hands clenched at his sides. What happens between me and my employees is none of your concern. Keanu's voice was quiet, but carried the weight of absolute certainty. I am making it my concern. Starting right now. And what exactly do you plan to do about it? I am going to make sure Harold Thompson gets the retirement he deserves. I am going to renovate his home so his wife can live with dignity. I am going to establish a foundation in his name to honor the thousands of people like him who make this industry possible. Keanu stepped even closer, close enough to see the fear flickering behind Richard's eyes. The only question is whether you want to be part of the solution, or part of the problem we need to solve. Richard's face flushed with anger and something else. Something that looked almost like pain. You come into me, Academy, and threaten me. It is not a threat. It is an opportunity. Keanu's brown eyes held no malice, only resolve. You can spend the rest of your life being the man who punished his mentor for telling him the truth. Or you can be the man who admitted he was wrong and helped make it right. The room fell silent. Richard stared at Keanu, then at Chad, Lawrence, and Carrie, Anne. 4 of Hollywood's most respected figures, all watching him, all waiting, all judging. He told me I had no talent, Richard finally said. His voice cracked slightly, the polished executive facade crumbling. Do you know what that feels like? To be told by someone you admire that you are not good enough. That you will, never, be good enough. Keanu nodded slowly. Actually, I do. Vincent Masters told me the same thing. In front of 50 people at a casting call. Said I was wasting everyone's time. Said I should go back to Canada and disappear. Richard blinked in surprise. He had not expected that. You know what saved me? Keanu continued. Harold Thompson. He found me that night, ready to give up on everything. Ready to let the darkness win. And he told me that talent can be taught, but a warrior's heart cannot. He said, I had the heart, And then he handed me the keys to the gym and let me train until I believed in myself again. Keanu stepped back, giving Richard space to breathe. What he told you about business was not an insult, Richard. It was a gift. He saw your true strength before you did. He believed in you. That is why it hurt so much, because his opinion mattered to you, because you loved him like a father. Richard's composure began to crack, really crack. The walls he had built over 30 years started to crumble. He turned away, facing the window and the city spread out below. My mother died when I was 7, he said quietly. His reflection in the glass looked like a ghost. Cancer. Took her in 6 months. My father could not handle it. Started drinking. Started disappearing for days at a time. Eventually disappeared for good. His voice grew thick. I grew up in foster care. Bounced from house to house. Nobody ever wanted to keep me. Nobody ever believed in anything I did. I was just another problem to be managed until I aged out of the system. He turned back, his eyes red with tears he was struggling to contain. Harold was the first adult who ever paid attention to me. Whoever took time to help me improve. Whoever looked at me like I mattered. His voice broke completely. When he told me I did not have what it takes for stunts, it felt like losing my mother all over again, like being abandoned by the only person who cared. I have been angry at him for 30 years. Angry at myself. Angry at the world. Keanu's voice softened. He never abandoned you, Richard. He steered you toward something better. Look at what you have built. You own this academy. You have created something remarkable. Harold saw that potential in you before anyone else. Before you saw it. The silence stretched on, heavy with decades of pain and misunderstanding. Finally, Richard spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. What do you want me to do? Keanu exchanged a look with his friends. Chad nodded. Lawrence folded his arms. Carrie, Anne's eyes glistened with unshed tears. Give Harold a real retirement package. Full pension. Back pay for the years you stole from him. Health insurance for him and Dorothy for life. Richard nodded slowly. And come with us to deliver it personally. Richard closed his eyes, fighting some internal battle that no one else could see. There is something else, he said. Something I never told anyone. He reached into his desk drawer with trembling hands and pulled out a worn envelope, yellowed with age. I got this letter from Harold 5 years ago, the day after I demoted him. Never opened it. Was too angry to read it, too scared of what it might say. Maybe it is time, Carrie, Anne said gently. Richard opened the envelope with trembling fingers. His hands shook so badly, he almost dropped it. He unfolded the letter and read silently, his lips moving slightly as he absorbed the words. Then he looked up, tears streaming freely down his face. What does it say? Chad asked. Richard's voice broke as he read aloud. Dear Richard, not a day goes by that I do not think about you and wonder how you are doing. I hope you know that when I told you stunts were not your path, it was not because I did not believe in you. It was because I believed in you so much that I wanted you to find where you truly belong. You had a fire in your eyes that I have only seen in the greatest leaders. I knew you were meant for bigger things than breaking your body on a mat. You were meant to build, to create, to lead. I am so proud of what you have accomplished. You proved that I was right to believe in you. Every success you have achieved fills my heart with joy. If I hurt you with my words all those years ago, I am sorry. That was never my intention. I should have found better words. I should have made sure you understood. But please know this. You will always be one of the students I am most proud of. One of the sons I never had. With love and eternal faith in you, Harold. The room was absolutely silent. Richard's hands trembled as he held the letter. He wrote that, he whispered. After everything I did to him. After I humiliated him. After I destroyed his career and his dignity. He still believed in me. He still called me his son. He still believes in you, Keanu finished. He never stopped. Richard collapsed into his chair, sobbing openly now. The polished executive was gone. In his place was a scared little boy who had been carrying 30 years of pain. What have I done? What have I done? Keanu walked over and put a hand on the man's shoulder. You made a mistake, a big one. A mistake that hurt people who did not deserve to be hurt. He squeezed gently. But it is not too late to make it right. It is never too late to make it right. Over the next hour, they planned the redemption together. Richard agreed to reinstate Mr. Thompson's full pension immediately, plus 8 years of back pay with interest. He would fund the renovation of the Thompson home personally. He would establish a scholarship fund in Harold's name for students who showed potential but lacked resources. And he would stand beside Keanu when they announced the Harold Thompson Foundation. But first, Richard had something he needed to do alone. I need to apologize, he said, his voice still shaky, face to face, man to man, before anything else happens. I owe him that. We will all go together, Keanu said. But you do the talking. As the group drove to the Thompson home, Richard sat in silence, clutching the letter from his former mentor. The man he had spent 30 years resenting. The man who had never stopped believing in him. The man who had called him son. When they arrived, the small house looked even more worn in the afternoon light, the paint peeling, the roof sagging, the ramp rotting. Richard stared at it through the car window. He lives here. This is what I reduced him to. Keanu nodded. For 35 years, I did this. Richard's voice was hollow. I reduced the man who believed in me to this. They walked to the door together. 5 people united by a shared purpose. Keanu knocked. Dorothy answered, her eyes widening when she saw the group. Keanu. And, is that? Hello, Mrs. Thompson. Keanu smiled gently. We have some visitors who would like to see Harold. Mr. Thompson appeared behind his wife, still in his janitor's uniform. He had not had time to change after his shift. His expression shifted from confusion to wariness when he saw Richard Blake. What is this about? Richard stepped forward, the letter trembling in his hand. His expensive suit seemed suddenly ridiculous against the backdrop of the modest home. His polished shoes looked obscene on the cracked walkway. Mr. Thompson, Harold, I. His voice broke. 30 years of walls came crashing down. He fell to his knees on the worn wooden porch. I am so sorry. I am so sorry. Mr. Thompson stared down at the man who had humiliated him for 8 years. The man he had tried to help 30 years ago. The man he had written to, hoping for reconciliation. The man he had never stopped believing in despite everything. Richard, I read your letter, Richard sobbed. The one you sent 5 years ago. I finally read it. Mr. Thompson's weathered face softened with understanding. A lifetime of teaching young people had taught him to recognize pain when he saw it, to recognize a soul in need of grace. Dorothy wheeled herself closer, taking in the scene with sharp, compassionate eyes. Harold has been waiting for you to read that letter for 5 years, she said quietly. He checked the mail every day for months, hoping for a response. Never gave up hope that you would understand. Richard looked up, tears streaming down his face like rain. You said you were proud of me, after everything I did to you, after I destroyed your career, after I made you clean floors. How could you still be proud of me? Mr. Thompson slowly bent down, his old knees protesting with audible cracks. He lowered himself until he was eye level with Richard on the porch. Because I was never angry at you, son. I was sad for you. Sad that you were carrying so much pain that you could not see how much you had already achieved. Sad that the little boy who used to stay late practicing could not see that he had become exactly what I always knew he could be. He put a weathered hand on Richard's shoulder. I should have told you differently all those years ago. I should have found better words. I should have made sure you understood that I was not rejecting you. I was redirecting you toward your true greatness. His voice cracked with emotion. But I never stopped believing you would become something remarkable. And you did. Look at what you built. Look at the empire you created. You proved that I was right to believe in you. I built it on your suffering, Richard choked. I punished you for being honest with me, for loving me enough to tell me the truth. Yes, you did. Mr. Thompson's voice carried no accusation, only gentle truth. And now you are here, on your knees, asking forgiveness. That takes more courage than any stunt I ever performed. Richard shook his head violently. I do not deserve forgiveness. I do not deserve anything from you. Forgiveness is not about deserving. Dorothy spoke up, her voice carrying the wisdom of 58 years of marriage. It is about choosing to put down the weight you have been carrying, the weight Harold has been carrying, the weight that has kept you both trapped for 30 years. She wheeled herself closer and took Richard's hand in hers. Harold has been carrying the weight of your anger for 8 years. Will you let him put it down now? Will you put down yours? Richard looked at the elderly woman in her wheelchair, at the man who had every right to hate him, at Keanu and the others watching silently, at the crumbling house that stood as testament to his cruelty. How? How do I make this right? It is too late. I have done too much damage. Mr. Thompson smiled, the same warm smile he had given countless struggling students over the decades. The smile that had saved Keanu's career, that had saved countless others. You start by getting up off your knees, son. Then you come inside. Dorothy makes terrible coffee, but she makes it with love. Dorothy swatted his arm playfully, a laugh escaping despite the tears on her cheeks. My coffee is excellent, Harold Thompson. You take that back. For the first time in 30 years, Richard Blake laughed. Really laughed. The sound was rusty and broken and beautiful. Mr. Thompson extended his hand. Richard took it, and the old coach pulled his former student to his feet. Welcome home, son. Over the next 2 weeks, the plan unfolded with military precision. Keanu arranged for the Thompsons to stay at a beautiful cabin in Big Bear Lake under the guise of a retirement celebration trip. The cabin was fully wheelchair accessible, with wide doorways and roll-in showers and a deck overlooking the pine forest. Dorothy cried when she saw it, not from sadness, but from the simple joy of being able to move freely through a space for the first time in 3 years. Meanwhile, an army descended on their home in Los Angeles. Contractors arrived before dawn on the first day. 40 workers in 3 shifts, operating around the clock. The old roof came off first, replaced with new shingles that would last 50 years. Walls were removed to create wider passages for Dorothy's wheelchair. The bathroom was completely gutted and rebuilt with a roll-in shower, grab bars, and heated floors. The community joined in ways no one expected. A flooring company that had worked with Keanu on John Wick donated hardwood for the entire house. A furniture store provided a new adjustable bed large enough for both Harold and Dorothy to sleep together for the first time in 3 years. Former students of Mr. Thompson flew in from across the country to help with painting, landscaping, and 100 small details. Chad Stahelski personally designed a new home gym where Mr. Thompson could stay active. Lawrence Fishburne arranged for a smart home system so Dorothy could control lights, temperature, and doors from her wheelchair. Carrie and Moss coordinated the interior design, ensuring every color and fabric reflected the Thompsons' personal style. Richard Blake funded everything, but more than that, he worked. He showed up every morning at 6 o'clock in jeans and work boots, his expensive suits forgotten. He hauled debris until his hands blistered. He painted walls until his arms ached. He learned the names of every contractor and volunteer, remembering details about their lives and families. On the 5th day, a local news crew arrived, requesting permission to document the project. Keanu agreed, with one condition. The focus should be on Mr. Thompson and what he has meant to this community. Not on me. Not on any of us. This is about him. The reporter began interviewing people on site. A middle-aged stunt coordinator choked up as he spoke. Harold Thompson saved my life. Not metaphorically. Actually saved my life. I was doing a high fall wrong, and he tackled me out of the way just before I would have hit the edge of the crash pad. broke 3 of his own ribs protecting me. Never hesitated. Never complained. A woman in her 40s shared how Mr. Thompson had paid for her first set of protective gear when her family could not afford it. He said, "Every warrior deserves proper armor. I still have that gear. Framed it in my office. Look at it every day to remind myself where I came from." A young man, barely 20, talked about meeting Mr. Thompson just months ago when he came to the academy as a janitor. "I came to the academy from a rough neighborhood. Did not think I belonged with all these privileged kids. Mr. Thompson found me sitting alone on my first day and said, 'The only difference between you and everyone else here is how hard you are willing to work. I believe you are willing to work the hardest.'" He was the first person who ever said they believed in me. Each story painted a picture of a man whose quiet acts of kindness had rippled through countless lives over 5 decades. By day 7, the house was unrecognizable. Fresh paint in Dorothy's favorite shade of blue. Wide doorways throughout. A beautiful accessible bathroom. A bedroom designed for both comfort and medical needs. A small physical therapy room with professional equipment that could help Dorothy potentially walk again. Outside, the cracked walkway had been replaced with a smooth, wide path of interlocking pavers. A gentle ramp led to the front door. Raised garden beds would allow Dorothy to tend flowers from her wheelchair. A covered patio offered a peaceful spot to watch the sunset. Richard had added one final touch. A custom-built display case in the living room designed specifically for Mr. Thompson's scrapbooks. Museum-quality glass. Perfect lighting. A way to honor a lifetime of collecting memories of the students he had helped. On the morning of the reveal, Keanu gathered everyone who had worked on the project. "Remember," he said, "when they arrive, give them space. This is going to be overwhelming. Let them process it at their own pace." The driveway was lined with former students, colleagues, and friends. Some held signs. Others held flowers. Many held back tears. At exactly noon, a car pulled onto the street. Through the window, Keanu could see Mr. Thompson's expression change from relaxed conversation to confusion as he noticed the crowd. "What in the world?" Dorothy's voice carried through the open window. The car stopped. Keanu walked forward as the door opened. "Welcome home, Mr. Thompson." The elderly man stepped out slowly, staring at the transformed house. The fresh paint. The new landscaping. The crowd of people who had come to honor him. "I do not understand," he whispered. "What is all this?" "You changed my life," Keanu said. "You changed all our lives. Now it is our turn to change yours." On the other side of the car, volunteers were helping Dorothy into her wheelchair. She gasped when she saw the smooth pathway leading to the front door. "Harold. Harold, look at the path. I can actually use it." Mr. Thompson took his wife's hand as they approached their home together. The crowd parted silently, many wiping away tears. Richard Blake stepped forward, holding a large pair of scissors tied with a red ribbon. His eyes were red. His hands were still rough from 2 weeks of manual labor. He looked nothing like the polished executive who had tried to destroy his mentor. "Mr. Thompson," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "would you do the honors?" Harold stared at the man who had humiliated him for 8 years. The man who had spent 2 weeks working alongside everyone else to rebuild his home. The man who was now offering him this moment of dignity. "Together," Harold said softly. "We do it together, son." Richard nodded, tears streaming down his face. Together, they cut the ribbon. The front door swung open, revealing the transformed interior. Dorothy wheeled herself through the doorway first, and the sound that came from her was something between a laugh and a sob. The wide hallways. The accessible kitchen. The bathroom she could actually use independently for the first time in 3 years. "Harold," she called out. "Harold, come see. I can reach the cabinets. I can use the stove. I can do things for myself again." Mr. Thompson walked through his home as if in a dream. He ran his weathered hands along the smooth walls. He tested the new handrails. He stood in the bedroom doorway, staring at the adjustable bed large enough for both of them. We can sleep together again, he whispered. Dorothy, we can sleep together again. Like we used to. And look at this. Keanu led them to the converted spare room. It was now a full physical therapy suite. Professional equipment. Supportive devices. Everything Dorothy would need to work toward walking again. The doctor says with the right equipment and consistent therapy, she might regain some mobility. Keanu explained. We wanted to give her that chance. Dorothy burst into tears. Harold held her as she sobbed, his own eyes streaming. Back in the living room, Mr. Thompson discovered the custom display case holding his scrapbooks. Your collection deserved a proper home, Keanu said. Harold traced his fingers along the glass, looking at the carefully preserved articles about the young man he had believed in 35 years ago. The young man who was now standing beside him, offering him a future he had never dared imagine. I do not know how to thank you, Harold said. You already did. Every time you unlocked that gym door for me at 5 in the morning. Every time you stayed late to help me practice. Every time you told me I had a warrior's heart when I felt like giving up. Keanu's voice broke. You saved my life, Mr. Thompson. You saved all our lives. One by one, former students came forward to embrace their mentor. They shared stories of how he had helped them, how he had believed in them, how his quiet kindness had shaped their careers and their lives. Richard Blake hung back, watching from the doorway. When the crowd finally thinned, he approached Harold slowly. I have something for you, Richard said, pulling an envelope from his jacket. This is the formal retirement package. Full pension restored, 8 years of back pay, health insurance for both of you for life. And there is more. Harold took the envelope with trembling hands. Richard, you do not have to. Yes, I do. Richard's voice was firm despite his tears. I also want you to know that I am stepping down as owner of the academy. Harold's eyes widened. What? I am donating my ownership stake to the new foundation Keanu is establishing. The Harold Thompson Foundation. It will support retired stunt performers and behind-the-scenes workers who gave everything to this industry. Richard's eyes glistened. And I want you to lead it. I want you to be the face of everything we are going to build together. Lit it. Keanu stepped forward. We want you to be the face of the foundation, Mr. Thompson. Share your wisdom. Identify people who need help. Be the mentor you have always been, but on a bigger scale. I am 80 years old, Harold said weakly. Which means you have decades of experience to share, Dorothy said firmly from beside him. You have spent your whole life helping others. Now let others help you help even more. Harold looked around at the transformed home, at the crowd of people who had come to honor him, at the former student who had finally found the courage to ask forgiveness, at the Hollywood legend who had never forgotten where he came from. All right, he said finally, but on one condition. Name it, Keanu said. Richard runs the business side. Harold looked at the man who had spent 8 years as his tormentor and saw only the scared young student he had once believed in. I was right about him all those years ago. He has a mind for business, and now he has the heart to match. Richard's composure finally shattered. He fell to his knees for the second time in 2 weeks, but this time he was not asking for forgiveness. He was receiving grace. I do not deserve this, Richard sobbed. Harold knelt down slowly, his old joints protesting loudly, and lifted Richard's chin with a gentle hand. None of us deserve grace, son. That is what makes it grace. He pulled Richard into an embrace. Welcome home. Months later, the Harold Thompson Foundation had grown beyond anyone's wildest expectations. The organization had already helped over 200 retired stunt performers and behind-the-scenes workers with medical bills, housing assistance, and emergency funds. A scholarship program had been established for young people from underprivileged backgrounds who wanted to enter the film industry. The academy itself had been transformed, with new safety protocols and a mentorship program that paired experienced professionals with newcomers. Harold and Dorothy Thompson lived comfortably in their renovated home. Dorothy had regained limited mobility with intensive physical therapy and could now take a few steps with a walker. Every morning, Harold woke up next to his wife of 58 years in their adjustable bed, and every morning, he thanked God for the second chance he had been given. Richard Blake had become one of the Foundation's most dedicated board members. He visited Harold every Sunday for dinner, and the two men who had once been separated by decades of pain now spent hours talking about the industry they both loved. Richard had started mentoring young business students, passing on the same message Harold had given him so many years ago: find your true strength, believe in it, and use it to help others. Keanu continued to visit whenever his schedule allowed. He would sit with Harold in the small home gym, listening to stories about the old days of Hollywood stunts. He would help Dorothy with her physical therapy exercises. He would play cards with both of them and lose deliberately because their laughter was worth more than any victory. One evening, as the sun set over Los Angeles and painted the sky in shades of gold and purple, Keanu found Harold sitting alone on the new patio, looking out at the garden Dorothy had planted. "Beautiful evening," Keanu said, settling into the chair beside him. "Every evening is beautiful when you have someone to share it with," Harold replied. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. "Can I ask you something?" Keanu finally said. "Anything, son. That night, 35 years ago, when you found me in the gym, ready to give up on everything, what made you decide to help me?" Harold smiled, the same warm smile that had changed so many lives. "I saw myself," he said simply. Keanu looked at him, surprised. "When I was young, I wanted to be an actor, not stunts. Acting. But I did not have the talent for it. Director after director told me I was not good enough. I was ready to quit. What changed your mind?" "An old stuntman found me crying behind a soundstage," he said. "Boy, you may not be able to act, but you move like poetry. Come with me." He took me to a gym and taught me how to fall. Taught me that there is more than one way to make magic in this business. Harold's eyes grew distant with memory. He passed away before I could ever properly thank him. So I made a promise. Every time I saw someone who was ready to give up, I would try to be what he was for me. Someone who believed in them. Someone who showed them another way. Keanu felt tears prick his eyes. "What was his name?" Harold smiled. "His name was William. William Keaton. I named my foundation after myself because people knew my name. But in my heart, it is the William Keaton Foundation. For everyone who ever showed a struggling kid that there is more than one way to shine." Keanu reached over and took the old man's weathered hand. "Thank you," he said, "for everything." Harold squeezed his hand. "Thank you for coming back. Most people forget where they came from once they make it. But not you. You remembered. And because you remembered, hundreds of people will have the chance I almost did not." They watched the sunset together in peaceful silence. Two men separated by decades but connected by something deeper than time. A warrior's heart, a mentor's wisdom, and the simple, profound truth that everyone needs someone to believe in them. The next morning, Keanu stopped by the academy one last time before flying out to his next project. He walked through the halls, past the trophy cases and photographs, past the training rooms where a new generation of performers was learning to fall and fight and fly. In the main gym, a class was in session. Young people from all backgrounds, all shapes and sizes, all learning the craft that Harold Thompson had dedicated his life to teaching. On the wall, beside the mural of Keanu in his John Wick suit, a new plaque had been installed. It read, "Talent can be taught, but a warrior's heart. You either have it or you do not. And if you are here, you have it." Harold Thompson. Keanu smiled, running his fingers along the words. Behind him, he heard footsteps. Richard Blake approached, looking nothing like the polished executive who had once tried to destroy his mentor. He wore jeans and a simple shirt, and his eyes carried a peace that had not been there before. "He would have loved to see this," Richard said, gesturing at the class. He still will, Keanu replied. The foundation is flying him out next month to give a master class. Richard smiled. Good. These kids need to hear his stories. Need to know what it really means to dedicate yourself to something bigger than fame or fortune. Keanu looked at the man who had spent 30 years consumed by anger and saw only gratitude now. You have changed, Richard. He gave me permission to put down the weight. Richard's eyes glistened. Do you know what that feels like? To carry something that heavy for that long and then suddenly be free of it. Keanu nodded. I think I do. They stood together, watching the class. What will you do now? Richard asked. Keep making movies. Keep doing my own stunts as long as my body allows. Keanu's eyes crinkled with his smile. Keep coming back here to remind myself where it all started. And the foundation? We have a good team. Harold's wisdom. Dorothy's spirit. Your business sense. The support of everyone who ever trained here. Keanu turned to face Richard directly. It will outlast all of us. That is the point. Richard extended his hand. Thank you, Keanu, for giving me a second chance when I did not deserve one. Keanu took his hand and pulled him into an embrace. That is what grace looks like, Richard. Someone believing in you before you believe in yourself. He stepped back, adjusting his worn hoodie and scuffed boots. Now, I have a plane to catch, but I will see you next month at Harold's master class. I will be there. As Keanu walked out of the academy for the last time, he paused at the entrance and looked back. Through the glass doors, he could see the main training room. Young performers learning to fall, learning to fight, learning that there is always another way to shine. And on the wall, the words that had changed his life. Talent can be taught, but a warrior's heart, you either have it or you do not. Keanu smiled. He had found his warrior's heart in a gym 35 years ago, when an old stunt coach handed him a set of keys and told him to never give up. Now, that heart beat in hundreds of others, and it would keep beating long after all of them were gone. That was the real legacy. That was the real victory. That was what it meant to matter. He climbed into his rusted Ford pickup truck and drove away, disappearing into the Los Angeles traffic. Behind him, the academy hummed with life, with dreams, with the sound of young people learning that they were worth something. All because one man had believed in them. All because someone had opened a door. All because grace, in the end, always finds a way home. Thank you for following this story! Let us know in the comments below if this story has moved you and you would like to stand with us in bringing more voices of truth and hope to light. Please consider supporting our work. Even the smallest gift helps us continue creating and sharing these powerful stories. You can find the donate link in the description. And of course, do not forget to subscribe so you will not miss the next chapter we are preparing for you.